Good morning, comrades. You are listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. We have Jeff on the show. No Robert this week. He is actually not. He's not. Well, he's actually during this time he's picking Aaron up from the airport. So we're recording ahead today, um, and we also have a very special guest. We have Lauren Jewett on the show. Lauren is a teacher in Orleans Parish. She is also a member of the United Teachers of New Orleans, who got a huge win today, by the way. As of Friday, as of recording, shout out to the Rooted School, who was voluntarily recognized. Their union was voluntarily recognized at that school. So one unit stronger. You've got to get them a contract now. And also, Lauren. Back to Lauren. Remember her? She is running for a school board in District 6 in Jefferson Parish. Is that right? It's 6, right?
Yes, it's
Okay.
District
I said
6.
4 one time, I think, and I was wrong. Because 4 is like Old Metairie, and you're
Mm-hmm.
more like basically everything that is sort of east of David Drive, all the way down to all the way up to the lake, and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of basically to Causeway. Is that about right?
Mm. Yeah, the
Or is it even
boundary
beyond
line.
Causeway?
No, the boundary lines are just before Causeway and it's Airline Highway, David Drive, and Veterans.
Yeah. Anyway, Lauren is here to talk a little bit about her experience, about a little bit about her campaign, and a little bit about teaching. So, how was your week, Lauren? With all the stuff.
Um, so I am few weeks out from Election Day, or actually less than 2 weeks.
It's like a
We're
week and a couple days.
Yeah, I think we're like 11 days away. So this has been, we're almost at the end of the light at the end of the tunnel with this campaign, and so it's been going on for a long time. I say it's been going on since January, but I would say more. It's probably been since May since I've been like really seriously doing things committed to this run, and I will say that it's been a lot of fun, although it is very exhausting all the time. I think if you talk to most people who decide to run for a political office, whether it's, I mean, definitely if it's local, you can't really necessarily always quit your day job to do that. You kind of have to balance either your work or life responsibilities while you're doing this.
Mhm.
And I'm a full-time teacher. So we know people who are full-time educators, people who are in kind of first responder kind of roles. If they if they're doing something as courageous and time consuming as running for office, I mean, they're already going to be exhausted because their work is already exhausting that they do on a day-to-day basis. So
So can I
I'm
just
tired all the time.
so can I just just sort of rewind a little bit and just sort of ask so let's talk a little bit about your background first. So you're a teacher in New Orleans. How long have you been teaching? What got you into teaching? And we can get into school board stuff in just a moment.
Yeah, I have been a teacher for 13 years. I'm actually in my 14th year, so I'm like, I haven't taught 14 years, but I've and now entered the 14th year. And
Sure. Yeah, it's way hard to count
I
that, but yeah.
yeah, I've been teaching since I've been 22 years old. I moved here in 2009 right after graduating college. And my first thought of, when I was in college is that I really wanted to be a lawyer and I wanted to study disability law and I wanted to really work on disability advocacy, disability justice, disability rights. My aunt had Down syndrome, so I was very interested in policies around that area. But I got the opportunity to move here, and I got into special ed, partly because of my aunt. And I've taught special education my entire career as a teacher. I've always done elementary. I've done every grade, kindergarten through fifth grade. I started my career in St. John, the Baptist parish. So I worked in Laplace and Reserve for a little bit. Um, but most of my time as a teacher has been in Orleans. I was a resident of Orleans when I moved here. But I now live in Jefferson Parish. I've lived in Jefferson Parish for 7 years. I live and own my home here in Jefferson Parish, and I, really want to see the community be successful and thrive, and I want to see our students uh, be the best they can be. And that's how I got into teaching. Was just I moved here and I was able to get my alternative certification as a teacher, and I stuck with it. I came to find out when I was maybe in 5 years in that, my grandmother was a retired, or that she had been a special ed teacher.
Mm-hmm.
She passed away when I was in elementary school.
Oh.
And, but she had taught special ed for over 30 years. So kind of in my blood a little bit. I also found out that she was president of her union
Oh.
up in New York, where I was born and raised. And so kind of, you know, a little bit of my narrative because, she did, the same kind of role I did. And she was very active and involved in her community and civic engagement and in her union. So that's really what I am about. And I just felt that I needed to step up and try to, um, take
Mm-hmm.
this a little bit step further than just in the classroom and
Mm-hmm.
helping students.
Sure. So you mentioned that your aunt was a member of the. Oh, was aunt? What, I'm sorry. Was it aunt or grandmother? I'm sorry. It slipped right past me.
My grandmother on my
Grandmother.
dad's side was a special education teacher
Mm-hmm.
in Buffalo, New York, and she um, she served in, I guess, a couple different. I guess we know it as union, union council or union
Mm-hmm.
leadership. But she served in a couple different roles. But she did serve as her president
Oh,
uh,
that's excellent.
when she was a teacher.
Now you yourself also have been very involved in United Teachers of New Orleans, the New Orleans Union. Can you talk a little bit about that, especially in light of, I mean, many people in this city don't even realize that, I mean, after Katrina, um, you know, many people will remember and they will talk about how United Teachers of New Orleans was attacked and largely dismantled after Hurricane Katrina, but it's still there, and a lot of people don't realize it. Can you talk a little bit about United Teachers of New Orleans, your work in that union, and sort of what you've done with it?
Sure. Well, like I said, I first started teaching in St. John the Baptist Parish, and I actually immediately joined a union as my first week of in service.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any reservations about joining. Some people who I was in who were new as well, and in the teaching program that I was here for, they were a little hesitant to join, but I knew, I'm a special ed teacher. I want to make sure that I have a lot of protections, just because we're doing with a lot of legal stuff as special ed teachers, and
As a fellow special education teacher, you ain't kidding.
yeah, and so I was a union member out there. I wouldn't say I was really active. Their union is with affiliated nationally with NEA. But I did know who the union rep at my school was, if I had a concern. But you're just trying to kind of learn so much the first year or two as a teacher. So I wouldn't say I was like going to union meetings and doing anything active. But it was nice to know I was still part of something.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I stopped working out in St. John and started working in Orleans Parish, I started working at a standalone charter school. I had never worked in charter schools, because St. John the Baptist Parish is more traditional public school. And I just was I went to a union training that they had. No, actually, for a long time, did a lot of in-service and PDs for teachers, or professional development trainings for teachers that were free, whether you were a member or not. And I went to one that was on response to intervention and how do you intervene when kids are struggling. And I remember, meeting some people there, and during the lunch time of the training, they make a little pitch to, like, help encourage people to become members. And I it was no question for me. I didn't need to be, really convinced, and I joined. And within a year, because you have to be on, a member for a year, I had another friend who kind of just said, "Oh, well, you should get on the council," because they were looking for people. And I was like, "Okay, well, what is this about?" And I was a member at large for a long time. I attended a lot of the trainings that UTNO had offered, and they were, we are still offering. We still have a professional development committee, but I met so many other educators and learned so much from those educators who were really veteran educators who would, attend those trainings, because they were continually trying to perfect their craft and be better educators. And I just love that spirit of continuous learning. So I was on the council, and then we had some moving around of some people on our council. Actually, our local president moved up to be the president of LFT, and so we had some people moving
Hey,
around.
Larry. I saw
Um,
Larry last night.
yeah, and I had worked on some school board campaigns, just as because I was an active member, and I did some canvassing and stuff in 2016 for the Orleans Parish School Board races. And I got really interested in that. I have a degree in political science. And I just, and I really enjoyed getting to knock on doors and talk with people and hear what their concerns were about. And, like, it helped me learn more about um, the educational landscape and what people's thoughts and concerns were. And so, because of my involvement in 2016 and 2017, when we had some shuffling going around on our council, I got approached and asked if I would consider filling the the COPE vacancy. COPE is the Committee on Political Education, like, role on the union council.
Hmm.
And so I served in that role from 2017 up until this past spring, and then I stepped down from it so that I could run for office. But I learned a lot from the people before me, from the people who coordinated a lot of different political education activities for teachers. And some of the things we would do would be um, informing our members, our teachers and paraprofessionals, and members of the union about how to get registered to vote, and how to know what was coming up on the ballot and the elections, and coordinating all the endorsements, interviews, um, when people would qualify for office, and then working on their campaigns to get them elected, and see who's going to be um, a ally and so for teachers, and who's going to really stand up for public education. And so, through my COPE role, again, I learned a lot about the political, like, um, infrastructure of unions, and I learned about some of the things that transpired before I, became a resident here in the Southeast Louisiana area related to education. And so I'm deeply grateful for my experience being a union member, because it's been an educational experience for me, not being from here, and being able to learn, um,
Hmm.
what happened prior to, and just what people's passions and concerns were. And but um, I worked on so many people's campaigns, and at some point people start asking you, well, when are you going to do this? And we can see that you have a lot of, like, interests and or passion. And I just felt like, given some certain circumstances that happened this year, now is the time. Elections, depending on the role, and school boards are 4-year terms here in Louisiana. It only comes across every 4 years, kind of like the Olympics. So
Hmm.
it was time,
So
especially going through
as
COVID.
we get to there, let me just pause really quick with your station ID, and then I just want to sort of ask a quick question about that. But really quick, you are listening to WHIV LP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade. Goodmorningcomrade.com for more information. We have Lauren Jewett on the program. Lauren is a teacher and union member in Orleans Parish schools. She is also currently running for school board in District 6 of Jefferson Parish. And so we were just getting into a little bit of your background. What were some of the things that led you to sort of inspired you to run for a school board? What made it seem that it was so important that you step up? You were mentioning that you had some experience running campaigns in the past, or being a part of campaigns as the head of the Committee on Public Education with United Teachers of New Orleans. So, what was it that sort of got you to step up and put yourself forward and become a public figure to run for this seat on the Jefferson Parish School Board?
Um, I was asked a lot of times while I was, helping people out with their campaigns, like the canvassing or the phone banking and that sort of thing. And especially, I am a woman, and like we know that women are underrepresented on all levels of government. And they say that a lot of times women have to be asked almost like 6 or 7 times, would they, will you run for office? And that's just asking them 7 times before they may even consider it. And I got asked a lot of times, and I'm just like, well, now's not the right time. I'm doing grad school, and I'm still, doing a lot of other things that I feel that I want to explore. But I will say that when we, went on lockdown during COVID, and we started to end that school year, that 2019-2020 school year. So, we were all on lockdown in March and April and May. Then summer came about, and so many teachers had questions about what's going to happen in the fall, who's going to be involved in these decisions, what are the return to school protocols going to look like, what does safety look like, and as well as I, because you taught during
Mm-hmm.
that time. There was so many situations throughout, that first full school year of COVID, I'm talking about the 2020 to 2021 school year, where we were virtual, and then we weren't, and then we were virtual. And, being a member of and being a member of the union, because of what you kind of alluded to earlier about situations of the union's, force prior to Katrina. We know now in um, our city where it's 100% charter, and the teaching force is transient. It's not as stable. And that was prior to issues we know of COVID with teacher shortages, but particularly here, teachers are not as they don't want to say that they're a union member. They're like they're kind of a little, they want to sometimes keep that close to their heart, and they don't want to actually state that publicly. For me, that was never something that I, wanted. I mean, I wasn't screaming it down the like hallways or the roadways. I'm a union member, but I am proud to be a union member. I believe in labor.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when those situations happened with COVID, and there was calls to action, to our union, like we got calls from reporters who wanted to know where are teachers' heads at with all these like new release of information, when we had to keep going back and forth the virtual, or just like masking and everything, vaccines, all those things. I Because I was on the council, sometimes when we got media requests, I got a call, and we got an
Yeah.
email to our whole council and said like, who can do an interview today, and or who can do, because when you get media requests, like sometimes it's very quick turnaround time. Like it's a reporter calling that morning and they want to, want to talk with you within 2 hours, 3 hours because they're
Hmm.
trying to do an evening segment.
No prep time, like
No
almost
prep
never prep
time.
time.
And I remember I did an interview in July of 2020. It was my first, like, I had done interviews before with the news because I had served on the board of the New Orleans Track Club, and whenever we had road races, we sometimes had for big events we would have the media come out, and I was the president at some point during my time on that board, and so I did do a news interview here and there, but when you're talking about some pretty sensitive, topics, really, like we're talking about COVID,
Hmm.
there's a lot more at stake there. And but anyway, I did a
Usually,
lot of
like before we
interviews.
move on from there too, it's also interesting too because you could talk to a news person for like 15, 20, 30 minutes or whatever, and they'll clip like 3 words from whatever you say the entire time.
Yeah, yeah. But I think I can't. I've lost count now, but in terms of the amount of actual news clips, like news interviews that I did, whether that was print or actual like in person or Zoom interviews with reporters. I did quite a lot all over the last 2 years because I also got some, I also did some interviews post Ida, and what was going on related to that because we had so much issue um, with quarantines, and then we were all out for Ida for several weeks. And so I think when you ask the question about like, well, what kind of got you, to where I am right now, and I think it's because of COVID, we needed people to step up and say, these are the things happening right now in schools, and these are the things that teachers and school staff are concerned about. And I happened to be available a lot of times for these news interviews, and I knew I had thought deeply about these kinds of issues because when you're in union meetings, you're talking about them. You're talking about them constantly with your colleagues and with your family and your neighbors and your friends, and so it wasn't any hesitation for me to offer myself up as a representative of UTNO and to speak on behalf of educators who we know were doing a lot of like important work during that time that wasn't, always being honored and wasn't being appreciated. Especially like after that initial lockdown, I think there was a lot of like battle, nationwide, statewide, like 'cause people were just like, there was a lot of uncertainty. So, that I think kind of gave me a little bit of a platform where I'm like, I can be a leader. Um, and people, had reached out when I did those kinds of interviews or texted me and just really said that they appreciated that someone was at least out there and willing to speak. And like some people we just had trouble finding some people sometimes to do those interviews because they were just nervous about putting themselves on, in a public setting, saying I'm a teacher and I'm a member of the union and I'm talking, like, so I didn't have any I knew I needed to do that because I know some people who wanted to do those interviews but just weren't in a situation where they felt safe to do so. But I think it was that, and then it was obviously when I got back from the holidays this year, and there was a situation where my particular school board district that I live in, that vacancy became available. And there was a lot of buzz around that. Um, I felt like I needed to step up and do that. And that kind of gave me that push where I'm like, okay, I gotta think about this seat in the fall. If
Hmm.
this wasn't, going through an interview for a vacancy, which I didn't receive, but you know, teachers just felt like somebody, needed to be there to like represent them,
Well,
to be
just to be a
potentially on
little
the
bit
board.
more specific and explicit about
Yes.
that, there was a guy who was appointed to the school board who it had turned out had not only been a part of, and this is, I guess, perhaps less important, he was a part of the January 6th, like, call it a riot, call it whatever. He was out there sort of in that situation. But also, he had like very awful like things to say publicly about educators and how we were
Mm-hmm.
essentially like leeches on the system and essentially part of the problem. And this
Yes.
person was appointed to the school board, and that got a lot of attention um, everywhere. And I guess is this I don't know. This is a dynamic that I think is popping up more and more across the country, that we're seeing more teachers that are coming in with like explicitly anti-teacher agendas. They say things about like I don't know, like various kind of wild things like critical race theory or whatever, that are things that are not happening in schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the yeah, that is the situation of what happened with the vacancy. A board member has stepped down who then after the holidays, in Louisiana, I think it's like 20 or 28 days or something. It's a very short window when a board member steps down. The sitting school board has, a few week window
Brief
to
window.
name a replacement, and it's up to the board to vote on that replacement. And that's only if like there's less than a year left on the term. If there's more than a year left on the term, I think sometimes they can name a replacement, but then they have to there has to be a setup of a special election to fill out the rest of the term. And I know this because it's happened a couple times in Orleans. Um, but when I'm very active and politically involved, and I'm like, no one knew what was going on, because again, holidays, we were all just like, let's just get to the holidays because of COVID and Ida and all the things that we were dealing with. And I, uh, I was like, okay, now is the time to step up to this because I was very discouraged to hear that someone was going to be appointed who felt these ways about teachers, especially in the moment that we were in the moment we are in, where we have teacher shortages and teachers feel like no one is listening to them and no one really sees what we do all day. And, what, so yeah, and to your point about you know, there are there are news there are news reports and different stories out there that people say, pay attention to school boards because school boards actually have a lot of authority over the things that that are they're an important office. That's
Hmm.
like just to be succinct. They're a very important local office, but because it's a down ballot kind
Hmm.
of situation, there's not often a lot of attention that's given to them.
Yeah, they're
Sometimes,
often
but
like almost completely ignored most of the time, and if you don't, when you see things on the ballot, you see things like, oh, there's a Senate race on the ballot. Oh, there's a House of Representatives race. Oh, there's a U.S. presidential race, and all those things are
yeah.
obviously very important. But what ended up getting lost in that shuffle, as you were just saying, are these like really important local school board seats, and also the Bessie board, which is
Mhm.
our statewide school board, which
Yep.
people don't really think about, I guess, quite so much. And I mean, I can tell you, as someone who's been to my fair share of school board meetings over the years, they make some huge decisions about the direction of
Right.
education that.
Right.
And you, as in someone that's in New Orleans, I mean, the school board can essentially decide to not even be involved in the specific day to day, and essentially
Mhm.
give the entire system away to charter schools, even.
Yeah, I mean, I think even besides educational things, because I've talked to
Contracts, yeah.
I've talked to voters as well who say, well, I don't have any kids, or my kids are, grown and now out of the school system, or my kids didn't attend, the public school system, but you're still a taxpayer. And the school board like does a lot of things in terms of like taxpayer dollars. And so they have a lot, there's so much that school boards do. But like I think too, people aren't even aware sometimes that they're allowed to vote for school boards. And in some states and areas, school boards are not allowed to be a partisan situational race. And when I mean what I say that is when someone goes in to vote for a school board candidate, or even when a school board candidate goes to qualify for office, they may not be required to list their party affiliation. That is not the case in Louisiana. We do have letters next to our name. We are asked that when we qualify for office, and I've gotten asked those questions on doors. I try to tell voters, yes, this is my party. I'm going to be completely transparent, honest. At the same time, I do, hope that people understand that as an educator, I uphold a lot of professional integrity in what I do, and I don't discuss those things with students. I got asked questions from students in 2016 and 2020. They asked me questions about who I voted for, and I'm like, I'm not allowed to tell you that. I said, that's not something that's part of our lesson that we're discussing. I said, just know that I voted. I vote. And I vote for what I feel is just and fair and right. And, I leave it at that. But I I do I do try to and tell voters like this is the issues, right? We're really trying to move away from like this divisiveness because when you're talking about school board, you need to talk about what is best for kids and those people inside of the buildings. And what's going to help drive the learning and the things that are needed to support that learning. So yes, topics come up that are divisive within campaigns around school boards, but I think who better than an educator to really talk about the issues because I live it day to day, and no one sometimes some people just don't understand what we're really going through, especially now. I would say this, like I really say, each year I'm like, oh, this is like such a hard year, or like next year's going to be like not as hard, and it just keeps getting harder, and that does terrify me because I do believe in public education. I went to public school K through 12, and I can see that the impact that it's had on my life. I had wonderful teachers, and I was able to go to a great college, um, and I've had so many opportunities because of the education that I received and the support and care I've received from teachers. And I think we need that sensibility and that value system on a school board. A lot of school boards don't have educators on them, or they do have some, but they're not like, it's not the majority. And I'm not saying I'm not saying a school board should be 100% educators. I think that we do have a need for people who have different skill sets who they can offer things because school boards deal and manage with a lot of money, and there's a lot of legal things, and so I do think it's good to have a balance. I do believe that, but I think that we've gotten really far away from actual educators running the decisions that affect us every day, and I think it shows. I think it shows in this state, where we are ranked consistently at the bottom of education, that we don't have educators that are really in those decision-making tables, at those decision-making tables, and I think it's really an issue that a lot of people, if they don't care about, they need to care about because education is, it's everything. And if we're not really being thoughtful about who we choose to vote for, it's gonna really impact you, whether you have kids or not. So
Yeah, of course. You are listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. You're listening to Good Morning Comrade. Today on the show, we have our guest, Lauren Jewett. Lauren is a teacher in Orleans Parish. She's also a member of the United Teachers of New Orleans, and she's currently running for District 6, Jefferson Parish School Board. And we were just talking a little bit about what led her into running for school board, some of her motivations. And I guess the next question that this sort of leads into, for me at least, is what are some of the key issues that you see as in Jefferson Parish? What are some of the things that you hear when you talk to people, to teachers, to parents, or even students? What are the things that are really important to people, and what are the things that sort of in your estimation, that you see are really critical here?
Yeah, I get the question a couple times. I'll before I kind of get into like issues, because you know, first sometimes voters are kind of confused because they or people are confused. They're like, well, you work in Orleans, but you don't work in Jefferson Parish. Like, how can you serve on the school board? And I said, actually, it's great because if I was a Jefferson Parish teacher and I did win, I wouldn't have to resign my position because you cannot govern your own employment. So I wouldn't have to, leave my students in the middle of the year, which I think would be very detrimental, especially in the situation we're in with staff shortages. And
Mm.
so I can, maintain my job. And I will say, school board positions in the state of Louisiana pay an $800 a month stipend. So no one can quit their day job.
Not exactly a living wage.
I'm not running because I want the $800 a month stipend. Although
Not even for the money.
it will help, but that's not about that for me. It's about, um, putting myself in a position to advocate on a larger scale for kids and families. But um, so I get that question a couple times, and while I'll say Jefferson Parish, being the biggest school system in the state of Louisiana, definitely has different issues than other school systems. And Orleans is a very different system than Jefferson, just because of the way in which it's managed and run, and the power and authority of the school boards in both of those parishes are different. The issues, bread and butter issues that teachers face, is very, very similar. So
Teaching, teaching, right?
yeah, and so some of the things that I, am trying to, you know, work towards, advocate for, bring light to, would definitely be mental health of our educators and our school staff and our students, and our families, right? We need to make sure that there's holistic supports that are in place for, um, our entire community that supports kids. That's parent, that's uh, aunt, uncle, grandma, the teachers, the bus
Guardians,
drivers,
yeah.
the cafeteria workers, the nurses, the librarians, everybody, who really makes the school run. And I think because of our issues that we have in this state with our climate uncertainties, and I think that with just COVID, and the disruptions in learning, like I'm seeing it now. Like I really do see the things that I have to also supplement and add on to, my math instruction and reading instruction and those kinds of things that I do anyway. Just the social interaction piece, problem solving, conflict resolution, the things that I need to do with students, just helping them self-regulate and calm down. Because we went through a lot as adults during these last 2-3 years, and you know kids that were 5 or 6 and now are 9 and like the age that I'm dealing with, those are formative years for their brain development, and we know trauma impacts the brain, and how it develops. So I'm really a big proponent of how can we really, make sure that we're prioritizing money in the right places, for mental health and wellness of everybody, because we know, especially for our middle school and high school age students too, that like anxiety, depression, like suicide is on the rise, and how can we have, things that aren't just like a response to, oh, like this incident happened, or like, this tragedy happened, or these things that we should not be like reactive. We need to be proactive. We need to make sure that we are having, resources and supports in place that are like ongoing, that are continuous. Like I'm very open. I go to therapy, and because I deal with a lot of anxiety on things, and I've been going for several years, and some days I go and I don't have as much to talk about because things are going okay. But it's like maintenance, right? Like you go and get your car and get an oil change for your
Change the oil,
car.
yeah.
Yeah, like, and your car could be, everything could be fine. Like, but if you keep putting off or you don't do those things, or your car or your home or all the, like things that you need to do, um, things are going to start to crack, and things are going to start to like not function as well. And so I just think like, how can we make sure things are ongoing instead of being like, oh, we had a death in our school community. Now we're just going to flood the school with grief counselors. Like, no, like grief pops up in so many different ways and at different times, and it can hit you. And like, you know, then we have kids that like want to maybe go talk to a social worker or counselor. Well, when you have a counselor in a school who has, it's 1 to 250 kids, or 1 to 500 kids, like that's overwhelming. Like, that's just not like really. I just see that we really need to invest in those kinds of things in a continuous way, because we're not, we're gonna be headed towards the like some pretty problematic situations. Also, we know in Jefferson Parish, because there's so
I'm
many
sorry. Before we move
schools.
on, I did want to talk a little bit about like my experience with that kind of thing in class, and
Yeah,
I have to do it
absolutely.
while my dogs are barking. Um, but anyway, um, my experience, like I teach special education myself,
Hmm.
and I always end up having a really good relationship with the social worker, just because of the nature of the job, and they're always often really good people to talk to, even for teachers.
Hmm.
But one of the things I've found out, for social workers even, is that they have so much paperwork and so much things that is not dealing with and servicing children, which is also kind of part of that problem as well.
Yep.
I don't know if you. I just wanted to sort of add that in. I don't know if you want to expand on that or not. It's not that important.
Absolutely. No, I mean, that's another cornerstone of like what I'm trying to, tell people about in my run, is that we have a lot of paperwork that's required of us, and some of it seems a little perfunctory, some of it seems unnecessary. Some of it I don't disagree with, because you need to have a paper trail that like helps either the next person who's going to work with that child, or just like, incidents that happen, or background, or family history, or things like, I mean, it's definitely necessary. But the sheer amount of paperwork and things that we have to do, and I'm talking about special ed teachers, social workers, and the teachers, right? The grading and all those things that we have to do. It takes, you want to do it well. You want to have, care and thought and be meticulous with it. But it's very hard to do when your brain is already overtaxed. And I say a lot of times, will I be able to address teaching shortages like on day one? No, like I don't have a silver bullet either. What I do offer is that I have been an educator for, you know, well over a decade, right? I'm in my 14th year. And what I can offer is like I've taught, pre COVID, I've taught during COVID, I'm teaching in the aftermath of how we're still in everything. And um, I think teachers need to be respected and paid more. I think the pay is absolutely necessary. But I don't find that sometimes teachers are leaving necessarily for just pay. It's a
Well, I can assure you
sustainability.
that that's the truth.
Right. It's a sustainability issue. It's the workload. When you go into work and you know that you're supposed to have 45 to 90 minutes, or however long your planning period is going to be, or that amount of time you're going to have during the day to get tasks and work done, or just to like eat your lunch and like, take bio breaks and things that you need to do. And that stuff is completely like taken from you because of lack of coverage, and all the things that I know happened to teachers throughout, um, you know, when we had a lot of absences during like COVID, and now have absences when we don't have classes covered because of lack of actual staff being able to fill vacancies, that work is then being taken home, or it's just not getting done. And that's not what our students deserve, absolutely at all. And so, like, what are we doing that's being taken off teachers' plate if we keep adding things? Like, from what I understand, because I don't work in Jefferson Parish, but I do know that y'all have cluster meetings, and that the cluster meetings are sometimes not very differentiated. And so, then teachers don't feel like their time is being spent well, or that like their time is their planning time is being a little co-opted. And I am all about teacher development. I am a mentor teacher in the state of Louisiana. I am a national board certified teacher. I have been a professional learning facilitator. I have coached teachers. I understand the importance of debriefing with teachers, developing their craft, having them look at student work, looking at the data. I get it. Like, we have to have time for that, but like, not everybody works in the same way. I'm somebody who I love collaborating with other colleagues and educators, but there's also certain times of my day where I actually just don't need to be around people, and I need that like 30, 45 minutes where I'm like, okay, I can like zone in on this task, or I can get this stuff done that I need to, or just take, human interaction time away, because it's exhausting being in front of people all day, like, and that's, we choose to do that, but like, when you don't have that for like 9 hours a day, it can be very draining. That can lead to the burnout that we're seeing. And so it's like, I feel that we need to make sure that we are restructuring and reconfiguring things in a way that like makes sense, because sometimes we're not going to always be able to get more time, but how can we be smart with people's time? How can we also treat them like professionals, and give them responsibilities that actually like are manageable, and treat them with dignity and humanity, because it's been unsustainable for a long time. We were the canaries in the coal mine for so long before COVID, and saying like, this is too much. We don't have like time to do all these things. And we were saying it and saying it and saying it, and nobody seemed to be listening. And now it's like, you see headline after headline of staffing shortages, and like, it's getting media attention, but like, people still don't really feel the impact of it. We're feeling the impact of it, and we were the ones sounding it. So yeah, I definitely agree about like issues about the paperwork. But yeah, I mean, on my push cards and things I address staffing shortages from a teacher perspective.
Right. And that's
It's
the
near
thing
and dear to my
that's
heart.
and that's the thing that's like, you mentioned this earlier. It's just sort of sorely missing from a lot of what decisions are being made in the school system, is that teachers are sort of like, I don't know, in a cursory way told, "Oh, we're listening. What you do is very important, and we want to hear what you have to say and whatever." And it's like, okay, it's and then they would just go and do whatever that they want to do anyway. It's almost like a
Yeah.
lip service. I'm sorry, that's me talking, not you. But
Well, yeah. I mean, what I can say is, and I don't know everything that I'll have to do if I get elected and get on that board. But my hope is that I will be able to still work in schools and be in proximity to schools and children. Like, I want to still serve, because this is what my background is. But I also want to be an absolutely effective and um, connected school board member. But like, if I'm there and I'm like coming, from work to go to a school board meeting, I'm going to be bringing some of the things that I dealt with all day. And I'm going to be bringing that, like, the essence of like what I saw and dealt with students during the day, and what I felt as an educator. And like, I mean, I want to bring those lived experiences up to the dais, right? That's that's what they call the little like
right,
board that the board sits on. And like, we have to remind ourselves, like, because I know there are people who are on the board and who did spend time in the classroom, and I think that's absolutely great. But a lot of things have like been different with education because of like what we've gone through in the last few years with COVID. And we're really starting to see the impact that it's having on our young people. And yeah, like, I commit to bringing that element of like, the voices of people onto that board. That's my duty. Like I, as an elected official, as a school board member, as a public servant, um, it's not about me. I represent and work for the people that, elected me, and I work for the people of the district, and the entire school board, you know. And I have to do, I have to do that gracefully, and I have to do that, I have to do that
Hmm.
with integrity.
So let me ask you. Well, before we do that, you listen to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. We have a teacher in New Orleans. We have United Teachers of New Orleans member and also um, candidate for District 6 School Board in Jefferson Parish, Lauren Jewett, on the show. Again, thank you for coming on the show. Um, I wanted to ask, as you have kind of gone through this campaign and announced, who were the people that have supported you? What kinds of groups? What kind of individuals? Who have you sort of responded, or who's responded to you, and who's sort of been sort of helpful like boosters of this campaign?
Yeah. Well, I when I first decided to do this, I looked into how could I, make sure I get on the ballot and everything, and I got on the ballot for free. It is a $230 fee with qualification like paperwork, money to get your name on the ballot. And I could have paid that with some donations that I received, but I decided that I was going to go around and knock on doors and get signatures to get on the ballot for free via petition. I did that. I feel very proud of that. I had friends and teachers help me collect those signatures.
I also think strategically that's probably a good way of doing some pre-campaigning, in the
Mhm,
sense that you get the idea that people have already decided to support your run from the beginning
yeah.
of that process, and so like that's a way to sort of get some a little bit of momentum going in the beginning.
Right. Right. And the reason I share that piece of information is, one, a lot of voters don't know that it costs that much just to get your name on the ballot. And we know with people feeling that money was tight, especially at that time of when I was doing the door knocking, I'm like, $230. I'm like, that's gonna be a lot of gas money for me, like, because gas prices were so high, and, like, we know grocery bills have been high, and, like, I just wanted to make sure that I'm, like, actually spending money on, like, what I need to be spending on a campaign that's pretty grassroots. I'm very thankful to the people who knocked on doors with me early on to get those signatures. Again, a lot of them were educators, who did that with me. And I will say, one group that was very helpful for me early on in the spring is Emerge. Emerge is a program that trains Democratic women to run for office, and I got accepted to that program. I had applied months before I even considered like even doing this, but they were looking for people and women in the area, and they provide you with a lot of different training on in the ins and outs, nuts and bolts of a campaign. And so they were very helpful because one of the people in the program connected me with a consultant who helped get my stuff off the ground, because I just was like, I know how to get on doors, I know how to talk to people, I know how to organize volunteers and do all that piece, but I was like, I'm not really quite sure of the like paperwork side, and how do I get my name on the ballot, and how do I do this? Actually, I was abroad when I qualified for office. I will say, I think I'm the only candidate that qualified from another country. I was finishing up some grad school work that got delayed with COVID over in Oxford, um, UK. And so I did, I said, just get me on doors, just get me on doors, and I know I can take it from there. And so I'm really grateful for just the connection I had through that program. It's a bunch of other women who are either considering running for office or have a desire to do that. And it just helps you build some networks. If you're not sure about it, and you need some support getting off the ground. Of course, my union has been super supportive. I that was the first endorsement I earned was from from Jefferson Federation of Teachers. I did my campaign endorsement interview from abroad as well with them, and because I got their support. I also have gotten the support of AFL-CIO. So it was very important to me to get the backing of labor because I've been a union member my entire career. So of course they have been helpful. They've been out doing some door knocking with me, provided some financial contribution to my campaign. And then I've gotten some endorsements and some backing from other local groups and state and national groups. I got an early endorsement from a group called Run for Something. They, find candidates who are 40 and younger who are really committed to innovative change in their communities. And they I did some talking with them early on, and they endorsed me, I think, back in May. And they provide you with a mentor who checks in with you. They provide you with some discounts on some different things that could be rather expensive for first time candidate campaigns and for people who are maybe just getting into it. And they provide you with social media support and lots of different things. And so um, you know it's been nice because then I've been connected to other candidates across the country who are doing other campaigns similar to mine, and it just makes me feel connected. And so they've been helpful. A similar group is kind of a connected group. They're called Building Bridges for America and Roadmap for Progress. They actually, I was able to give them some information so they could write postcards for, my campaign. So write postcards to voters. And they did like a kind of like a little media interview kind of with me, and they do really good social media support as well. So those are some national organizations that, looked into supporting me. I got endorsed by Forum for Equality, which is the state's LGBTQ rights organization. And I'm deeply appreciative that I received their endorsement and support because when I advocate for kids, I talk about all kids and all people's rights. And I got an endorsement from Step Up for Action, which does a lot of economic justice work and fighting for good schools and good jobs. We know that those things are connected. And so, yeah, I got an endorsement from Alliance for Good Government. So I got a lot of
Yeah.
endorsements, but I mean, again, endorsements do not vote. You want the endorsement of voters. But
Just
yeah,
sorry, we're running short on time, but
yeah.
I did want to give you an opportunity to give the listening audience an opportunity to, well, if they wanted to find out more information about your campaign or support it, where can they go to find that?
Right. I have a website. It is www.laurenjewett.com. It's Jewett. A lot of people like to spell my last name wrong, but that's how you spell it. And then I have social media accounts on Facebook and Instagram at Elect Lauren Jewett,
Mhm.
and I'm on Twitter at Elect L Jewett. So those
All
are the
right.
ways you can follow my campaign.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining the show. PD is voicing, he's got something to say about the campaign as well. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And you have been listening to WHIV-LP New Orleans. We love you. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right.